What if the gods were never protecting us, but protecting themselves from us? History speaks of 12 sacred oracles chosen by ancient gods, but it never tells you why the 13th was erased. Not forgotten, erased, because the 13th oracle did not see the future. It saw the truth, and the gods were afraid of what it revealed. Tonight, we uncover what was buried beneath the sand, and why it should have stayed there. You are now entering the Occultic Abyss, where forbidden truths are unearthed and ancient horrors are awakened. They said the desert was empty, forgotten, dead. They were wrong. Beneath the ruins of a city erased from history, something was buried. Not treasure, not knowledge. A warning. The excavation team uncovered it at dusk, a sealed stone chamber hidden beneath 13 layers of carved rock. No doorway, no sign of worship, only a single symbol etched into the surface. A circle split into 13 fragments, 12 faintly glowing. One cracked. Inside stood a black monolith, cold and older than recorded history. 13 names were carved into it, but history remembers only 12. The 13th name had been violently scraped away, as if even writing it was forbidden. At the base of the stone, in a half-deciphered dialect, a message. Only 12 were chosen. The 13th was never meant to speak. They should have sealed it again. Instead, they studied it. That night, the wind died. The stars dimmed. The cracked symbol began to glow. And something buried long before civilization opened its eye. Before the 13th, there were 12. 12 chosen by the gods themselves. 12 whose names were etched into history, whose faces were carved into temples and statues, whose words shaped the mortal world. They were guides, protectors, oracles of truth. But even in their power, the gods feared them. The legends speak of 12 great truths, secrets so potent that any mortal who learned them would be either elevated or destroyed. And each oracle carried one. Alone, they were powerful. Together, they formed a chain that bound the world in order. But the 13th was not a mistake. It was a curse. Long before humans carved the first cities into the earth, before kings and priests raised their temples to the sky, the 13th oracle existed unseen, unspoken, erased. The gods feared it. Not its knowledge, not its power, but its vision. It could see what even the gods themselves tried to hide. It could see the collapse of empires, the betrayal of heaven, the hunger of men. And the gods, they silenced it. The 13th was locked away, buried beneath stone, hidden in a temple swallowed by sand and time, and its name removed from memory. But the other 12? They carried on. Oracles whose voices could summon storms, whose words could ignite revolutions, whose prophecies shaped history. And yet, with each passing century, the 12 grew uneasy. Whispers spread through the temples. The one that was erased, the one that sees everything, waits. It was said that if the 12 ever gathered together, the 13th would rise, breaking the seal, shattering the chains, and revealing truths no mortal could endure. Some say the 12th oracle on its deathbed screamed into the winds, "We failed. The gods feared the wrong thing. The 13th sees the end, and the end is coming." The temples grew silent. The statues cracked. The names of the 12 remain etched in stone, but always with a shadow lingering behind them. A shadow that belongs to the unseen. And now, the sands have shifted. The ruins have whispered again. The chamber beneath the forgotten city has opened. The 13th, the cursed oracle, is stirring. And the world is not ready for what it will reveal. The night was alive with silence. The desert wind had stopped. The ruins held their breath. Even the stars seemed to fade, dimmed by something ancient, something aware. Inside the sealed chamber, the excavation team had gathered. Candles flickered weakly, casting shadows that danced like the memories of the damned. Dust hung heavy in the air, thick as smoke, and every breath tasted like earth long dead. The scholars, ignorant of the warnings etched into the walls, began the ritual. A circle was drawn on the floor. Symbols carved into the stone were traced in charcoal and blood. The 13 glyphs glowed faintly, pulsing as if they had a heartbeat. It was supposed to be a test, a discovery, curiosity. It was a mistake. The moment the final glyph was marked, the chamber shivered. The walls moaned, ancient stone grinding against itself. The monolith at the center pulsed with dark light. One scholar dared to whisper, "Did we awaken it?" The air grew thick, cold, teeth chattering cold that wasn't from the desert wind. Shadows stretched and moved as if alive, creeping along the walls toward the intruders. A whisper filled the room, low and insidious, not carried by air, but by the mind itself. "You should not be here." No one could tell who spoke, and yet each heart knew the voice was true. The candles flared. Shadows leapt. A scream erupted sharp, sudden, cutting through the chamber though no one had seen the source. And then the monolith cracked. Not with stone, but with something deeper. A darkness that felt like teeth, like cold metal dragging across your soul. A fissure opened in the center, glowing with a sickly green light. And from it, a presence emerged. It was the 13th. Not human, not God. Something older. Something that had been waiting, hungry, patient. It did not move. It did not speak. It simply looked. And when it looked, the air itself trembled. One by one, the scholars felt it inside them. A claw of fear sinking into their minds. Memories twisted, nightmares bleeding into reality. Every sin, every regret, every secret desire, exposed and magnified. Some fell to the floor, screaming. Some ran blindly into walls, trying to escape what could not be outrun. And above the din, a single whisper repeated over and over. The 13th sees, the 13th remembers, the 13th waits. Time fractured. The chamber seemed to stretch and contract, impossible angles forming. Statues in the desert above groaned as if the earth itself mourned. The night outside turned unnatural stars blinking out one by one, leaving only darkness. The ritual was no longer theirs. It belonged to the cursed oracle. And as the scholars looked into the fissure, they saw visions, cities crumbling, rivers boiling, forests rotting. Humanity itself in decay, judged by eyes older than the first sun. One final moment, a final, blinding pulse of light. And then silence. When the survivors woke, they were not alone. Something had entered the world. Something that had been waiting for centuries. The 13th had awoken. And the prophecy, the curse, was no longer dormant. The desert was silent, but it was not empty. The survivors staggered from the chamber, their eyes wide, their hearts hammering in unnatural rhythm. The sand beneath their feet seemed to shift with a life of its own, whispering secrets no living being was meant to hear. At first, it was subtle. A shadow moved just beyond the torchlight. A chill that clung to the skin, colder than death itself. The air tasted metallic. Whispers flickered at the edge of hearing promises, threats, commands always in a voice that was not human. One by one, they noticed the marks. Faint, carved into their flesh overnight. Symbols that mirrored the cracked glyph on the monolith. At first, they thought it was a trick of the light, a hallucination born from fear. It was not. Time itself began to warp. Clocks stopped at 3:13 a.m. The desert stars blinked out, then returned. Animals avoided them, running frantic in impossible directions. And from the shadows, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The 13th sees, the 13th chooses, the 13th takes. Sleep became a torment. Dreams invaded reality. Survivors woke screaming from visions of ruined cities, rivers boiling with blood, forests filled with crawling, unseen creatures. Each dream revealed pieces of the curse, each more horrifying than the last. The marks on their skin pulsed. Cold fire. Pain without reason. One scholar tried to burn it away with flame. The mark laughed, glowing brighter. Then the first vanished. A scream echoed across the ruins. They found nothing. Only the scorched ground where he had knelt, and a single word etched in the sand. Chosen. Panic spread. The group fractured. Every attempt to leave the ruins failed. The desert itself seemed to shift, paths folding back upon themselves. Every step forward brought them closer to the monolith, closer to the curse. By nightfall, they realized the truth. The curse was not passive. It hunted. It selected, and it was alive. One survivor noticed their reflection in a shard of broken obsidian. The eyes staring back were not their own. Something ancient, cold, patient, stared from within. Whispers became commands. Some obeyed, walking into the night willingly, vanishing into the black desert. Others resisted, screaming, tearing at their flesh, only to find the mark seared deeper, burning with each heartbeat. And as the night drew on, a shadow passed over the ruins, massive, impossible. It bent the stars, silenced the wind, and left a single chilling thought in every mind. The 13th has begun. The survivors were no longer themselves. The desert had claimed their certainty, their reason, their humanity. And the world outside had no idea that the first ripple of the ancient curse had begun. The desert had become a graveyard of sound. Silence weighed like stone. The wind no longer whispered, it screamed through the ruins, rattling bones, rattling minds. The survivors were no longer walking. They were crawling through an unseen labyrinth, every shadow reaching for them. It was then they found the record. Hidden beneath the crumbling altar of the monolith, etched in obsidian and bone, a tablet older than memory revealed the truth. The 12 oracles had been chosen to guide humanity, yes. But the 13th had been a different entity entirely. Not a mortal, not a god. Something older, something the gods themselves feared. It was not born of the heavens or the earth, it had existed before them. A being of sight, memory, and hunger. A living mirror that reflected all truths, the truths even the gods hid. The 13th had not failed. It had been erased, buried, and sealed, because it saw everything. It saw the greed of kings, the corruption of priests, the hunger of humanity itself. It saw the gods' lies, their cruelty, their fear. And it whispered what no one was meant to hear. Now it was awake. The chamber trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling like rain of ash. Shadows stretched and tore along the walls. The survivors could hear it before they saw it, a low, guttural rumble vibrating through the stone, through the air, through their bones. "I see you," it whispered. "I remember you." It was not a voice. It was a storm in their skulls, scraping sanity from their minds. Every memory, every thought, every secret sin revealed in 1,000 twisted echoes. The survivors screamed, but no one heard them. The desert had claimed their cries. And then the monolith shifted. Stone cracked, black light spilt like blood from the fissures. The glyphs burned with heat unseen. The air became molten. Shadows detached from walls, forming shapes of clawed hands, gnashing teeth, and eyes where none should exist. The survivors tried to run. The desert no longer obeyed the laws of the world. Paths twisted impossibly, cliffs dropped into voids of darkness. The sky bled red, the stars falling one by one. And through it all, the 13th watched, patient, relentless, aggressive. "The gods feared me. Now you will fear me." One scholar fell to his knees. His eyes blackened. His scream tore itself from his throat before vanishing into nothing. The others saw their own future in his death and realized the curse was not selective. It was complete. It was inevitable. The truth settled like venom into their minds. The 13th oracle was not a guide, not a protector, not even a messenger. It was a predator. An ancient, immortal predator. And the awakening was not a warning. It was a hunt. The desert held its breath. The monolith pulsed. Shadows lunged. The survivors understood too late the world had shifted. The curse had begun. And from the deepest cracks of the black monolith, a single thought echoed through every mind. "I am the 13th. I see. I remember. I take." The night had grown teeth. The survivors stumbled through the ruins, each step dragging them deeper into a nightmare they could not escape. The desert had become alive. Sand shifted beneath their feet like breathing flesh. Shadows moved independently of light. The wind screamed their names. And then they saw it. Marks. Burning, blackened glyphs carved into their skin. At first, faint scratches, like the touch of some unseen claw. But by dawn, the marks pulsed, glowing faintly with the same sickly green light that had bled from the monolith. They were not just symbols, they were a signature of the oracle, a claim upon their souls. One by one, the marks grew. Fingers, arms, torsos. They spread like infection. And with each pulse, a whisper pierced their minds. I see you. I remember you. You are mine. The survivors tried to scrape them off. Water, fire, blood. Nothing worked. Every attempt made the marks burn hotter, searing deeper. One man's scream tore through the ruins as the mark etched itself across his chest in a pattern impossible to describe. The desert itself seemed to react. The stars flickered violently. The wind twisted into a vortex, carrying screams from nowhere and everywhere at once. Shadows coalesced into shapes, forms with twisted limbs, teeth like broken glass, eyes where none should be. They lunged, grazing the survivors, leaving trails of frost-burned flesh. Sleep brought no respite. Dreams became reality. The marked felt commands they could not resist. One walked willingly into the dark dunes, leaving nothing but footprints that burned into the sand and then vanished. Another clawed at her own eyes to escape the visions forced into her mind. The marks were not passive. They were hungry. They were the oracle's fingers reaching into their flesh, into their very souls. A single thought burned into their consciousness over and over. The 13th claims all. You cannot run. You cannot hide. By the third night, the survivors were shadows themselves. Eyes sunken, skin pale, bodies trembling with unnatural energy. The world outside seemed to distort. Paths that once led to safety now folded back into the cursed ruins. And above it all, the monolith pulsed in rhythm with their hearts. The glyphs on their bodies throbbed in sync. It was no longer a mark. It was a link, a leash, a tether to something that hungered, something ancient and merciless. Every heartbeat carried the oracle closer. Every thought whispered surrender. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, the voice of the 13th growled. You belong to me. You are my chosen. Your fate is sealed. The world will follow. No one was safe. No one could fight. The mark had begun, and it would not stop. The world no longer breathed. The sky had shattered into blood and shadow. Oceans roared with fire and ash. Cities crumbled under the weight of a reality twisted by the oracle's will. Mountains bled, rivers boiled, and the wind carried screams that were not human. And through it all, the 13th watched. Not from afar, not from some distant temple, but inside every mind, every soul. Its presence was a black tide flooding the earth, bending thought, memory, and fear into obedience. The survivors, the cursed, the marked were the first witnesses. But they were not the last. The oracle spoke. Its voice was not words. It was the world itself speaking. You are weak. You are fleeting. You are nothing, and yet you will remember. Visions ripped through the minds of all who saw. Civilization, history, humanity itself all revealed as fragile, insignificant threads in a tapestry older than time. The gods themselves trembled. They had created the 12 to guide the world, to maintain order, and yet they could not stop what had awakened. The final prophecy was simple and horrifying. The 13th oracle would reveal all truths, the hidden sins of gods and men alike. Every betrayal, every secret, every shadow of the heart. Humanity would see itself naked, and then it would end. Some whispered it was judgment. Others whispered it was evolution. None survived the horror of understanding what the oracle truly was. The monolith cracked entirely, spilling light that was neither day nor night. Shadows detached from reality, forming colossal shapes that devoured the air. Time fractured. Past, present, and future bled together. And the oracles will become manifest. All shall kneel, all shall know, and all shall remember the truth that even the gods feared. The survivors felt their bodies split, their thoughts ripped, their souls etched with fire. The curse was complete. The prophecy unfolded. And the world became the oracle's vision. One last whisper carried through the chaos. I am the 13th. I am the end, and I am eternal. The desert, the ruins, the monolith, all that remained was the echo of inevitability. The final prophecy had come, and humanity, would never be the same. Silence fell. Not peace, not calm, but the suffocating, heavy silence that comes after something too vast to comprehend has passed. The survivors were gone. The ruins swallowed their screams. The desert no longer moved as it had. Only the monolith remained cracked, pulsing with faint, sickly green light. And somewhere, deep beneath it, the 13th watched. A single transmission remained. A recording, half destroyed, crackling through interference that warped time itself. If you are hearing this, a trembling voice began, know that it is not over. It cannot be stopped. The 13th remembers, and it is coming for all of you. Static swallowed the rest. Then a whisper, low, cold, dripping into the mind of anyone listening. I am eternal. I am the unseen. And I will rise again. The sky above the ruins darkened unnaturally. Shadows stretched across the land, curling, writhing, alive. Every star blinked out in sequence, leaving only black. Winds howled like voices of the lost, carrying memories that were not theirs. And for a moment, the world itself seemed to pause, trembling under the weight of an unseen gaze. The last transmission ended, but the message remained. The 13th oracle had not finished. It had only begun. And somewhere, deep in the cracks of reality, the eye of the oracle opened once more. The desert waited. Humanity trembled. And the darkness watched. You cannot hide. You cannot resist. I see all. I remember all. I am eternal. The screen went black, and the whispers lingered,